Commercial cherries are obtained from cultivars of several species, such as the sweet Prunus avium and the sour Prunus cerasus. The name, cherry, also refers to the cherry tree and its wood, and is sometimes applied to almonds and visually similar flowering trees in the genus Prunus, as in ornamental cherry, or cherry blossom. Wild cherry may refer to any of the cherry species growing outside cultivation, although Prunus avium is often referred to specifically by the name, wild cherry, in the British Isles. Cherry wood is valued for its rich color and straight grain in manufacturing fine furniture, particularly desks, tables and chairs. A cherry is the fruit of many plants of the genus Prunus, and is a fleshy drupe. The English word cherry derives from Old Northern French or Norman cerise from the Latin cerasum, referring to an ancient Greek region, Karasaus near Giresun, Turkey, from which cherries were first thought to be exported to Europe. The indigenous range of the sweet cherry extends through most of Europe, Western Asia, and parts of Northern Africa, and the fruit has been consumed throughout its range since prehistoric times. A cultivated cherry is recorded as having been brought to Rome by Lucius Licinius Lucullus from northeastern Anatolia, also known as the Pontus region, in 72 BC. Cherries were introduced into England at Tenham, near Sittingbourne in Kent, by order of Henry VIII, who had tasted them in Flanders. Cherries arrived in North America early in the settlement of Brooklyn, New York, then called New Netherland, when the region was under Dutch sovereignty. Tradespeople leased or purchased land to plant orchards and produce gardens. Certificate of Cornelis van Tienhoven that he had found 12 apple, 40 peach, 73 cherry trees, 26 sage plants, behind the house sold by Anthony Janzoon van Sally to Barent Dirksen. Anno 18th of June 1639. The cultivated forms are of the species sweet cherry to which most cherry cultivars belong, and the sour cherry, which is used mainly for cooking. Both species originate in Europe and Western Asia. They usually do not cross-pollinate. Some other species, although having edible fruit, are not grown extensively for consumption, except in northern regions where the two main species will not grow. Irrigation, spraying, labor, and their propensity to damage from rain and hail make cherries relatively expensive. Nonetheless, demand is high for the fruit. In commercial production, sour cherries, as well as sweet cherries sometimes, are harvested by using a mechanized shaker. Hand picking is also widely used for sweet as well as sour cherries to harvest the fruit to avoid damage to both fruit and trees. Common rootstocks include Mazard, Mahaleb, Colt, and Gisela ceres, a dwarfing rootstock that produces trees significantly smaller than others, only 8 to 10 feet tall. Sour cherries require no pollinizer, while few sweet varieties are self-fertile. A cherry tree will take 3 to 4 years once it is planted in the orchard to produce its first crop of fruit, and 7 years to attain full maturity. Like most temperate latitude trees, cherry trees require a certain number of chilling hours each year to break dormancy and bloom and produce fruit. The number of chilling hours required depends on the variety. Because of this cold weather requirement, no members of the genus Prunus can grow in tropical climates. Cherries have a short growing season and can grow in most temperate latitudes. Cherries blossom in April in the northern hemisphere, and the peak season for the cherry harvest is in the summer. In southern Europe in June, in North America in June, in England in mid-July, and in southern British Columbia, Canada, in June to mid-August. In many parts of North America, they are among the first tree fruits to flower and ripen in mid-spring. In the southern hemisphere, cherries are usually at their peak in late December and are widely associated with Christmas. Berlat is an early variety which ripens during the beginning of December. Lapins ripens near the end of December, and Sweetheart finish slightly later. Generally, the cherry can be a difficult fruit tree to grow and keep alive. In Europe, the first visible pest in the growing season soon after blossom, in April in Western Europe, usually is the black cherry aphid, which causes leaves at the tips of branches to curl, with the black fly colonies exuding a sticky secretion which promotes fungal growth on the leaves and fruit. At the fruiting stage in June-July, Europe, the cherry fruit fly lays its eggs in the immature fruit, whereafter its larvae feed on the cherry flesh and exit through a small hole, about 1 mm diameter, which in turn is the entry point for fungal infection of the cherry fruit after rainfall. In addition, cherry trees are susceptible to bacterial canker, Cytospora canker, brown rot of the fruit, root rot from overly wet soil, crown rot, and several viruses. The cherry kernels, accessible by chewing or breaking the hard-shelled cherry pits, contain amygdalin, a chemical that releases the toxic compound hydrogen cyanide when ingested. The amount of amygdalin in each cherry varies widely, and symptoms would show only after eating several crushed pits. Swallowing the pits whole normally causes no complications. An experiment conducted on the amount of cyanide found in cherries showed that a normal cherry pit contains 0.004 milligrams of cyanide, which is not a fatal dose for humans, but is best avoided, as different varieties of cherries may contain higher amounts of cyanide. In Australia, cherries are grown in all the states except for the Northern Territory. The major producing regions are located in the temperate areas within New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia and Tasmania. Western Australia has limited production in the elevated parts in the southwest of the state. Key production areas include Young, Orange and Bathurst in New South Wales, Wandin, the Goulburn and Murray Valley areas in Victoria, the Adelaide Hills region in South Australia, and the Wan and Derwent valleys in Tasmania. Key commercial varieties in order of seasonality include Empress, Merchant, Supreme, Ron's Seedling, Shalon, Ulster, Van, Bing, Stella, Nordwunder, Lappens, Simone, Regina, Cordia, and Sweetheart. New varieties are being introduced, including the late season, Staccato, and early season, Sequoia. The Australian cherry breeding program is developing a series of new varieties which are under testing evaluation. The New South Wales town of Young is called the Cherry Capital of Australia, and hosts the National Cherry Festival.